I found a great deal on these tires online. I had been looking at them for a long time, but they were rather expensive. But I found a set online, I think it was on Tire Mart, and they'd been mounted on customer wheels and dismounted, and they were $100 a tire off. I couldn't say no. Here's a comparison of the tire I replaced. These are Buckshot radial mudders, which are no longer available. These particular tires are about 27 years old, which isn't great, still have studs in them and are fairly worn. So I decided to upgrade, but I love this, absolutely love these tires. They really suit the vehicle. They're more period correct, but unfortunately they're no longer available in radials. So I had to go with bias ply. So obviously there are some disadvantages going with bias ply. These tires are actually advertised as not recommended for road use, but hey, how can you go wrong with those? They just look awesome. And check out the tread depth. Well over 3/4 of an inch deep. That's nuts. Stay tuned, and at the end of this video, we'll put these tires to the test. This is the project I'm supposed to be working on right now, is getting this Farmall Cub back on the road, sealing up that final drive and fixing the brakes, and then going through the hydraulics unit. But instead, I'm building shackles for the Willys, of course. Putting these new tires on it just motivated me to do some other projects I've been putting off. Here are the stock shackles. And they're just kind of on the short side. And I just wanted a little bit more lift on the front for a couple reasons. And well, just for looks for one, and just more tire clearance. And the reason I thought longer shackles might be a good idea to tilt the axle just a bit. At full turn, the steering arm gets really close to the axle tube at the current height. So tilting the front of the leaf springs down a little bit will help with that. And I may add another leaf to this spring pack to give it a little more lift too. I want to get a total of about an inch on the front, and then it'll make it pretty level. These particular shackles aren't the ones I'm going to use, at least I don't think so. I just was playing around. I'd already had these plates that came off a parts truck years ago, and so I just started playing around with those. Those are an inch longer than factory. I think I'm going to go an inch and a half longer. Already started cutting the plates. So we'll get that project done. I'll weld a little support in the middle there and make them all fancy. So that's what I'm doing instead of working on the tractor. When I put this back together, I'm going to put washers between the spring and the shackle. The bushing that goes in the spring is not much wider than the spring itself. So the shackles tend to rub on the springs and on the spring mount. We've got a nice fire going out here in the shop. Makes it a little more comfortable. Can usually get it about 10 degrees warmer than outside temperature, which right now the outside temperature is a little over 50 degrees, and it's close to 60 degrees in here, which is not bad for working. Not bad at all. So here is the stock shackle plate next to one of the ones I was starting to make. But I discovered that we don't have a 7/16 drill bit that's going to cut through steel. It took me probably 20 minutes to drill those 2 holes. So I gave up, and I'm not interested in going to get drill bits or find decent drill bits right now. So I decided to just make some shackles with the plates that I already had from Parts Jeep that I had previously. It's not the prettiest, but it'll work. It's they're, as far as dimensions, they're somewhere between the stock and the ones I was going to make. This is they're an inch longer than the stock ones, whereas the ones I was making was 1.5 inches. So these will work for now. Get me up and running. One thing I did notice is the the bushings aren't great. I mean, there's probably just a couple hundred miles or a few hundred miles maybe on this Jeep since those were installed, but it's been definitely more than 10 years. It's probably been closer to 15 years, so it could just be age too, and I don't totally trust the quality of these. So for now, I've got to assemble it like it is because I don't have bushings currently. I'll probably order some and then take it apart and install new bushings. I know they're going to be a pain in the butt getting them out of there, so that's a project for another day. They're definitely still better than when I replaced them originally. We're not wearing into the actual spring or anything like it was. So we're going to stick these shackles on, and then another day we'll get the bushings swapped out and get this thing back on the road. All right, here we go. All right, old one's out. Gonna clean some of the rust off while we're here. For some reason, the bushings on this side aren't as bad, but still wouldn't hurt from being replaced. The top one doesn't look too bad at all. We'll get some on order though. So I've got these tires way off the ground and still no minimal gap between the eyes there. So I'm sort of wondering if these OEM style shocks are a little too short. I think I'm going to pop the top of that one off and find out, because they just may be too short. These are some what appear to be custom leaf springs from a Parts Jeep I had, and I have no idea how much lift they are. They seem to be a little bit of lift, but I've always been curious about them because Rancho, as far as I know, is the only one that's ever made leaf springs lifts for these. And I don't know, I use these because they were double wrapped, kind of a military wrap on there on the end of the leaf spring. And I just thought they looked like decent quality springs. They only have 3 leaves, but I think they may be lift springs. This is a set of Rancho front lift springs that I have. I went with the other ones because they just look like a better quality spring. They have military wrap, which is a second spring wraps around the first. And then also they have tapered leaves, whereas these don't. So that's why I went with those. But I am tempted to rob the bottom spring, like that one right there, from this pack and put it on the bottom of these to lift it up a little bit more and provide a 4-leaf pack instead of the 3 I have currently. Pop the shock off and jacked it up some more, and the shocks on the front are definitely limiting the travel. So looks like that's something else that's going to have to be on the order list, is new shocks. Put a little bit of grease on these washers and bolts just to hold things in place while I put it together. I'm reusing the stock bolts on this since they seem to fit okay. And today, in the broke Jeep nut garage, continuation of my suspension project, I built those homemade shackles, and the bushings that were in there were rather shot, so I decided to replace those. But there's a lot of complaints about those, like a lot of aftermarket parts for these rigs. They're just poor quality. They're inexpensive, but they're poor quality, they don't last, and they're absolutely miserable to remove. So I tried about every method you can think of. There's the inner bushing and the outer bushing. I tried the ball joint removal tool, which may have worked, but the one I have is rather tweaked and it just wouldn't stay centered. So that didn't work. I tried, C-clamp. I tried drilling it out. I tried all sorts of things. And the one that really ended up working the best was torching it, getting it hot, and then beating on it with a punch to get that inner bushing out, and doing that repeatedly, and eventually it came out. And mind you, this is one of 4 bushings. So that's how I finally got that one out. For the rest, I may try a ball joint removal tool that's not tweaked, but I want to show you what I did. And then after I got that inner bushing out of there, I made the mistake of using a Sawzall to cut through that outer bushing, which others have done, but I should have used, I have this little handle that you can put on a Sawzall blade to just use your hand. That's what I should have done, is this bushing's really thin. I ended up cutting into the mount there. I didn't cut all the way through, but I did cut into it a little bit. I was just getting impatient and using the Sawzall, and I shouldn't have. So I put some JB weld in there. And also that's the reason why I cut it on the bottom, is just in case that's not going to be the wear surface. The weight's going to be on the top of that. So anyway, it'll be fine. I just cut into it a little bit. I put some JB weld in it. But instead of replacing that with the original style bushings, I am going with Energy Suspension polyurethane. And if nothing else, it'll be easier to replace in the future, is there's no outer sleeve that presses into that hole, so the urethane shouldn't be a problem to get out. So this was about $25. I don't remember where I got them, either Summit Racing or Amazon or eBay, I'm not really sure. But that's what I bought. Let's see. You can see the part number there, 22101G. And there's another brand that makes these too. I don't remember what the other brand is, but Energy Suspension's a decent brand. So we're gonna run with that and see what happens. Too bad I wasn't prepared. There we go. All right, that should work. This time, I'm gonna do it right the first time, and I'm actually going to lube up the bushings with the supplied lube to minimize squeaks. One thing I've learned is you wanna put this in first prior to putting in the internal bushing, because you stuff that internal bushing in there and it spreads this out and makes it harder to put in there. So I'm gonna lube this up and stuff this one in there and then lube up the bushing and put it in there. That went so much quicker than last time. If this style bushing doesn't work out long term, the other thought I had was to go to a more modern Jeep style bushing. These won't fit, but I could maybe size some and or possibly modify them and go that direction. But that's the other option long term if this option doesn't work out. But I'm sure this is going to be better than what was in there. Can't be worse. Should last longer and be easy to remove if I do need to replace them. We're going to take her for a spin, see how she rides with these tires. Since we weren't able to balance them, because it was asking for a ton of weight on them, and just wasn't going to work out. So we are going to take her for a spin and see how she does. She's either a little cold-blooded or there's some water in the fuel.
Don't got any death wall or nothing.
Not a problem. She wanders a little bit more, but hey, that's part of the thrill.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me with all that tread in there a little bit bigger.
Yeah, but they just buy a supply.
Yeah.
Locking in the hubs for some off-road action.
Oh, no. Got in a little bit of a hole. Came right out though, we're good.